My name is Elisha Mancini Castor, and this is Reverend Connie Beth Grady, and we are going to discuss mediumship in reference to the development class that happens on Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. So, Connie, what is mediumship?
Mediumship is channeling inspiration or spirit messages from the spirit world to someone in the physical world. There are many forms of mediumship. There's clairaudience, there's clairvoyance, there's actually healing, there's clairsentience, and there is also inspirational speaking. In our mediumship class, we cover all forms of these. Clairaudience is hearing with your mind. When you dream or you think about a conversation you've had with someone, you're hearing physical words, but you're not hearing them with your physical ears. You're hearing them with your mind. And so mental mediumship is all in the mind.
Can anyone be a medium?
Everyone is a medium to greater or lesser degree. Many times people have had dreams, and that can be a form of something that's going to happen. That also is a form of mediumship. Sometimes you might walk into a room and you just know something. I had that experience when I was 12 years old. I walked into the room and I knew that the lady sitting on the other side of me had just found out she was pregnant. And what I didn't know is she wanted to keep it a secret. We all have things like that where it's in our auric field and somehow we just absorb that information. All humans have had this ability, but eons of time have gone by when in churches, people wanted to be in control. And so we were taught that even though the Bible says we're children of God, and even though Jesus said, what I do, you can do also, some of the higher ups in all religious organizations eliminated that part of our ability. And it's like receiving things. What I like to say is when I was a kid, we had the old radios that were seated up on this big piece of furniture that was like some of the old TVs. Well, we would have to tune in to get that right vibration of the airways to get a certain radio program. Our faculties is learning how to tune in to receive those things in a spiritual vibration. However, when we haven't used those, it's like anything else physical. They kind of go dormant, or if you haven't used them, you don't know how to open up to that. So it's learning how to go with inside, learning how to trust, learning how to listen to who we are, our spiritual being, to open up those spiritual faculties.
So in a typical mediumship class, how would we start to unravel those or wake up those dormant sensitivities?
Well, many times we will have a guided meditation. And most of the time, the guided meditations will be in the dark. For one reason, I love color. And so if someone is sitting across from me, I will be looking at how beautiful the colors are over there instead of going within. When we turn the lights out, that allows us to be more in tune with our inner self and more able to let go of the physical and go away from the physical into listening to the guided meditation. And so our minds will fill in colors and names and places of whoever's giving the directives of the guided meditation. After a while, when a student becomes very comfortable in listening to the words, usually they will start seeing something or hearing something that was not placed there. And that's called priming the spiritual pump to allow yourself to let go of those physical I can'ts and just allow yourself to dream along with the words of imagination and allowing then visions to be placed in your mind.
So when those visions are being placed in your mind, who is placing them there?
Well, we all have someone that's called a joy guide or a spirit guide who works with us. And they work with us, giving us, let me put it this way. We all have different symbols in our mind already, in our brain battery that's stored, that might mean something that they can use to give a message to us. And they call that spiritual shorthand. For instance, when I started giving a message, the first thing that I saw about a symbol, I saw a Lipton tea bag. And it was explained to me when I saw this tea bag, it would mean that someone is giving somebody just lip service. They're not meaning what they're saying. So please be aware that this person is not really on the up and up. Look past their words. It's learning how to interpret symbols to give a message.
So it's kind of like learning a language.
Yes, yes.
And so could you elaborate a little more about our guides?
Yes. When I believe, I do know that everyone that is born into this wonderful human world, everyone has at least a guardian angel. People who are awakening and are interested in metaphysics, we all come with several guides. One I explained was the joy guide or the message bearer. We also have a doctor teacher that is doctor of philosophy that helps us with our spirituality and how to live our life in metaphysics. They work with us. We have a doctor of chemistry who helps us with our physical body and helps us with our emotional bodies and help us stay into balance, body, mind, and spirit. We also have, most of us have an Indian guide. It doesn't necessarily mean we have a Native American guide, but most of us do. And the Indians have expressed that it is their way of forgiving us for what we did as Caucasians coming to this beautiful United States of America when it was just the Americas and the Native Indians were here, and what we actually did to them, slaughtering Indians and taking over their land. That's a beautiful thing. But an Indian guide will help guide us and protect us when we're driving, when we're in dangerous situations. They're strong in all kinds of emotional ways. Our chemist, but our Indian guide too, if we're working on something like trying to quit smoking or eating healthier, they are able to help us in those lines. When we get interested into healing, then we attract a healing sister to us or someone in spirit that helps us with the healing mediumship. And then we all have a master teacher who is over all of these guides and teachers. And they are kind of the onlooker. And when we really grow spiritually and we're interested in the spiritual path, they come into play in our guiding and directives of our inner world.
So just to touch on the Native American really quick, so they serve, so you're saying they come to us as a way of saying, if we do have a Native American guide, as a way of saying that they forgive us?
They forgive us as a race or as it's their way of forgiveness, of working this all out. In other words, when we have been harmed in any way, part of our forgiveness path is serving those who have oppressed us in any way, mentally, physically, spiritually, in any way. When I will go on to elaborate on that just a little bit, because in the Bible, the disciples asked the Master Jesus, how many times do we have to forgive? And the Master said, 70 times 7, if that's what it takes. Well, you see, that type of forgiveness is when we can't forgive something and it torments with our mind, and sometimes we lose the ability to function because it makes us out of balance. And it's learning to forgive that person, to allow these things to be taken away and allow them to flow from our life so we can have a more beautiful life and not become victims.
That is wonderful. So, how do I know if I am seeing something because Spirit is showing it to me versus whether I am just using my imagination?
Well, in class, we have times where we give messages to one another. And in the practice of receiving and giving messages, one can become pretty proficient at what they're receiving, learning how to interpret, how to give it. And in the practice of that, we begin to see when we're right and when we're wrong. It also allows Spirit to know how they're giving us the message, and sometimes they give it to us in just a little bit different way. So it's a practice of receiving from Spirit and a practice of them how to give us the message. It's working together. We learn to raise our vibration, and Spirit lowers their vibration, where we meet on an even plane.
Great. So where and when did you become a medium? And could you tell us a little bit about your teacher?
Well, first of all, everybody is a medium. And I know that as a child, I had two older brothers. And so one was 8 years older than me, and the other one was 12 years older than me. So I had a lot of time to be by myself. And that was before everyone had a television, so I didn't have a television. So children in that time used a lot of imagination. And so I know I received things at that age. However, as we grow through puberty into teenage years, most of us focus on things entirely different. And so how I knew that I was becoming a medium truly and able to give messages was in a development class very similar to what we have here. However, I was so fortunate because the teacher I had, the Reverend Virginia Falls, was someone who taught the spiritual path and taught the awakening of the heart as well as the awakening of mediumship. Spirit has taught us that those mediums who are spiritually minded are more valuable than any other type of medium, because Spirit is able to convey the philosophy of spiritualism and to convey spiritually what would help that person you might be giving a message to. My teacher also was a materialization medium, which means she had the right body chemistry that Spirit could use her body chemistry, which is etherealized protoplasm, to produce something called ectoplasm. And many classes Spirit was able to materialize and give lectures and philosophy to us and explain about healing and how life works and what our purpose as human beings are, what our purpose is to be on this earth plane as human beings. That we're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to learn about love. Even though it's important to have an education to live on this earth plane, what our purpose here really is, spiritually, is to truly become love.
Wow. So, could you elaborate a little more on the materialization part and how that took place?
Well, Virginia's little guide name was Evening Star. And when she lived on this earth plane, she was a Lakota Sioux. And materialization was always done in a red light. And people would say, well, what about a white light? Well, a white light would destroy the ectoplasm and it would snap back into the body of the medium and could physically harm that medium and has even killed many mediums. The red light does no damage, so it was always produced in the red light. And when evening, there is a cabinet that the medium would set in, because when ectoplasm is coming from the body, it comes from the orifices of the body, and it's not too pretty to look at. But in this cabinet, which is nothing more than behind a curtain, they're able to build a form, an ectoplasmic form. And Evening Star would walk out and greet everyone, and she would have her dark braids, and she would say, "Can you see my braids?" And she would make sure everybody could see her, because then she would know that the spirit who would come to each individual, the spirit loved one, each person would be able to see them. Now, the spirit form would, for instance, sometimes it was in color if there were enough energy. And she would produce a red rose and a blue rose. And she would have each of us smell them. And it would have a fragrance, and it would be a spicy fragrance. And she would allow us to know that she would gather this fragrance from the healing gardens in spirit. And she would say that the blue and the red produce purple, which is the highest healing color. So on times when there would be enough energy that these spirit forms were insulated, we could touch these forms. And other times they would come up and touch us. I can tell you, to explain what ectoplasm would feel like is for those people who are old enough to know what angel hair, this substance that is white and made out of spun glass, I believe what it is, fiberglass, that we used to put on the Christmas trees. It's kind of sticky like that. That's what ectoplasm would feel like. At times you could feel a warmth, and other times you couldn't feel a warmth. But the warmth was coming because this product was made from the medium's body, so it was still there. At times you could see straight through the hands, and other times it would be solid. But one time my sister from Spirit came out, materialized. And this was in 1969. And there were no electronics back then, but she came out in this beautiful dress. And underneath the netting of the dress was hundreds of thousands of tiny little twinkle lights. And she had a lei around her head of twinkle lights. There are many wonderful things that we've seen in a materialization, not only physically, but spiritually also. They would all come with a message of enlightenment, or a story of what they do in the spirit world, or maybe to someone else they would explain to them what was going on with their loved one and how to cope with the problem that they might be having with a relationship, or even in financial ways. it was a very lovely thing, but always there was this feeling of spirituality and love and inspiration, and always, always, always words of wisdom.
Wow. And so that's very moving. So has the church really, I know as a member, I feel that the church has really carried over her legacy, and I feel that same love here.
Absolutely, it has. And I feel her presence, and Evening Star and Dr. Bartlett, her main guides here, and I know that the people here feel their presence as well as their own guides and my guides and teachers. Her theme was love and light, and she loved the people right where they were. And when you would attend a church service, or you would go to her for a reading or a seance, you would feel her love, because she absolutely opened her heart to you. And in the fact that she loved us where we were at that moment, just on the first meeting, it made us want to be more. It made us want to grow into more. It made us want us to grow into that spiritual presence that she had. She taught us, and she had found that the only thing you get to keep is what you give away. And so it was her good pleasure to give love, to give understanding, and to give her mediumship to anyone that crossed her path. That love and that light is healing. I see it on the earth plane today. Maybe we aren't aware of it so much when we listen to the news, media, but shopping and phone calls and talking to people, not just our religion, but all religions, I see people are awakening to a softer side, awakening to an understanding that they're becoming aware that we're all one.
So it seems like the focus of mediumship at this church is really on focusing on the beautiful things. And so maybe in some practices of mediumship, they talk about less than love, and maybe that we need to be protected when we're doing mediumship.
Well, what Spirit has taught us is, I use the word crumb bum. If you're a crumb bum here on this earth plane and you pass away, you're the same 5 minutes later when you get there. However, like attracts like. So those people are attracted to like-minded people. And so in that aspect, they're happy where they are for that present moment. So even they, in some sense of the word, have gone to their heaven because they would not feel comfortable where we are, perhaps. When the way they live no longer serves them, then they are taught that all they have to do is call on someone, and someone will come and help them. We have learned that the light always dispels the darkness. If we are all children of light here, we know about love, we understand about love. Love always overcomes anything negative. It won't vibrate together. If it were possible, then our guides and teachers would assuredly protect us from anything like that. They have explained that to us many times. So in all the years from 1969 till now, I have never experienced anything fearful or negative in any way.
So what would someone expect coming to a class for the first time?
Well, we have a lot of humor in our class. We have a lot of love in our class. And you would be I would say, initiated in the forms of mediumship and how that works. We would give you a little crash course. Many people, their first time here, when it comes time to give a message, we will work with you, and many times first timers are able to receive something that is evidential for someone else. And you would most assuredly be welcomed. We have a gentleman by the name of Scott Nash who has a lot of humor. And if we go in the healing class and in the meditation class, we turn out the lights. And he will say with humor, "Are you afraid of the dark?" And normally a person will say no. And he will say, "Well, you will be now," with all the love and humor in his heart. And we all laugh together. So they know right away that it's something that they can relax, that we're all together. We like humor, we like laughter, we like spirituality. And to be a well-rounded spiritual human being, we have to have humor and laughter and love in our life.
So, are there different types of classes one might experience one week to the next week?
Believe it or not, every class is different. We've had classes for 13 years now, and I don't think any of the two are alike. I work with impressions that I get from my guides and teachers as to what to talk about, what to have that particular night. Sometimes we work with psychometry, sometimes we work with clairvoyance, sometimes we have a meditation class, sometimes we just talk about forms of mediumship, how it used to be like when there was materializations and something called trumpet mediumship and direct voice mediumship, which you will learn about if you come to class. Those are forms that I don't know anyone that truly has those anymore. And I would like to explain this about physical phenomena. In the late 80s, most materialization mediums were directed not to do that any longer. And I know my teacher was told, if you try, we just won't take you into trance and you'll just sit there. And they explained that they no longer would develop physical phenomena mediums because it was becoming too dangerous. Because people that wanted to prove it or disprove it began turning on lights and harming mediums. Now, I feel there's another reason for that. In the Piscean age, people wanted to see something to believe it. In the Aquarian age, it's the age of love and awakening unto who we are, truly spiritual beings. And the importance of mediumship in these days, I feel, is teaching the students how to go within their own spiritual avenues of the heart chakra, of the heart and mind, of receiving inspiration from their higher selves as well as spirit guides and teachers to awaken themselves into a spiritual path, because it's the connecting and growing spiritually in the awakening of a new vibration that's going on today in this wonderful Aquarian age.
Very nice. So I've experienced your dark class, and sometimes when you channel, could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I channel, it's how they worked with me. That's the only way I can say. How they worked with me is when a lot of it has to do with sitting by yourself or in a dark part of a class. It's getting used to feeling spirit surrounding you, connecting you, overshadowing you, becoming one with you. At first, when you start feeling these things, it's like, oh, I experienced this and this and this and the other. And that's our physical enthusiasm receiving these impulses and feeling taps and pats. And I know the first person I ever felt overshadowing me, I felt my lips change. I felt my head and my face change. I felt like I was male instead of female. Well, I couldn't allow anything to happen that night because I was excited. Oh my goodness, I feel these lips, I feel this. After a while, when this becomes so natural that it's like breathing, and you can allow your mind to be even and to trust spirit enough to step out of the way, it's learning to let go and allow them to speak through you. At this time, there's usually, each medium has something that allows them to get into that place. My teacher had in the garden, and that's what speaks to me too, allowing me to get out of the way in a spiritual way to allow spirit to speak through me at the time.
And that's a song?
Yes, that's a song. I come to the garden alone while the dew is on the roses. To me, it's like a meditation. I feel as though I'm walking in a healing garden in the spirit world. So that allows me to let go and to be in a spiritual place. When this takes place for me, I will see light either on the right or the left of my head, sometimes on both. So much so that if there's a moment where I have a moment to myself, I can even see physical things in the dark with my physical eyes. Or I believe that's what I'm doing. I can just tell you that's what I see. But it's a very humbling experience. I do hear the words as they're being said. You soon forget the words. And so in some ways, in my human form, I often wonder if at that time the class made sense. For me, that part of mediumship, you really don't know. So it's trusting, it's having faith, and allowing yourself to be used.
And so everyone's in the dark at this time and they're just experiencing...
You don't have to be in the dark. I feel more comfortable being in the dark. I think sometimes there's light that have come through. I don't know if people see me standing there, but I feel more comfortable for some reason being in the dark.
And so as a class, we would be hearing the words from Spirit come forward and share whatever the class needs to hear?
Yes. I will tell you, many, many, many years ago when I was in class, we would have classes on what we felt our mission was in this life. And every time I would have to say, it's teaching spiritual law. It's allowing people to know about that they're spiritual beings that are filled with goodness, and allowing them to know that how to remove those negative images that they've been taught of themselves to become one in spirit. However, I truly, had I wanted my way, I would have liked to have had the kind of mediumship that my teacher had for us, where guides and teachers and loved ones came out to speak. However, I guess that wasn't my form of mediumship. You see, it's not always my way. When we work with spirit, we have to know it's not my way, it's thy way. And any way spirit and guided energy can use me or anyone else is what we need to be open to.
Thank you, Connie. So,
bless you.
Tell us really quick when class is.
Class is supposed to start at 7:30 on Wednesday evenings. We're out by 9:15 normally. However, there is a spiritual healing class that is going on, and sometimes it runs over. So we've been a little late here recently, but that's a short-term thing. We have a healing practicum that everyone's invited to come. It's a beautiful service from 6:30 to 7:30. We have energy healing, Reiki healing. We have sound healing, and Scott Nash has made a pyramid, so you may lay under the pyramid and feel the pyramid energy as healing is taking place in the sanctuary. It's a very healing, spiritual service, and anyone is welcome to come.
And that's free?
Yes.
The healing.
And the mediumship, you're allowed to make a free will offering if you want to. Many people do, other people don't. And the mediumship classes are $10, which is very reasonable these days. So we want people to come and open themselves to their own divinity so they can go into the world and be pillars of love and light.
Thank you, Connie.
God bless you.